Ed Sullivan was famous for bringing the biggest stars in the world to American television. He was calm, serious, and always tried to keep things classy. But behind the scenes, not everyone was welcome. Because some performers were so rude, so chaotic, and so impossible to control. Ed Sullivan didn't just dislike them, he made it obvious on live TV. Tonight, we're counting down 9 performers Ed Sullivan couldn't stand, and the awkward moments that proved it. And trust me, number 1 was so shocking, it became legendary. Let's jump in. The Doors. When the Doors were invited to perform on the Ed Sullivan Show, it was supposed to be a huge career moment. Their hit song, Light My Fire, was exploding in popularity, and appearing on Sullivan meant instant mainstream success. But backstage, producers warned the band that one lyric was not allowed on live television. The line, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher," sounded too much like a drug reference, and Ed Sullivan's team demanded it be changed. The Doors agreed, acting like they would follow the rules. However, once the cameras started rolling, Jim Morrison stared straight ahead and sang the original lyric anyway, loud and clear. The studio froze. Ed Sullivan was furious because he felt publicly disrespected on his own show. After the performance, Sullivan reportedly told the band they would never be invited back again. That rebellious moment became legendary in rock history. Elvis Presley. When Elvis Presley first exploded onto the scene, he wasn't just popular, he was dangerous to old-school television standards. His wild stage moves, hip shaking, and rebellious attitude made many adults furious, and Ed Sullivan was one of the biggest critics at first. Sullivan believed Elvis was too suggestive for a family audience and didn't want that kind of energy on his show. But Elvis was becoming impossible to ignore, and the pressure to book him grew stronger every week. When Elvis finally appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, the tension was obvious. Producers carefully planned the camera angles, and during one of his appearances, Elvis was famously filmed from the waist up to hide his controversial dancing. Ed's introductions felt stiff and forced, almost like he was trying to stay professional while clearly uncomfortable. Even though Elvis delivered a massive performance, it was clear Sullivan didn't fully approve, he simply couldn't deny the star power. The Rolling Stones. When the Rolling Stones appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, they were already known as the bad boys of rock, loud, rebellious, and impossible to control. But Ed Sullivan ran his show with strict rules, especially when it came to lyrics that sounded too sexual or inappropriate for families watching at home. Their hit song, Let's Spend the Night Together, instantly became a problem. Sullivan's team demanded the band change the line to something cleaner, so the song wouldn't cause complaints from parents and sponsors. The Stones agreed to perform it as, Let's Spend Some Time Together, but Mick Jagger clearly wasn't happy about it. During the live performance, Jagger sang the censored lyric, yet he made it obvious he was mocking the change, exaggerating the words and rolling his eyes. Ed hated that kind of disrespect. Even though the band performed successfully, the tension was obvious, and viewers could feel the clash. Jackie Mason. Jackie Mason's clash with Ed Sullivan is one of the most uncomfortable moments in the show's history because it wasn't just tension, it turned into a full public feud. Mason was a fast-talking comedian known for sharp timing, but during his live appearance, the show was running behind schedule. Ed Sullivan reportedly started giving Mason signals to wrap it up, trying to move things along. But instead of taking it as a normal TV cue, Mason believed Ed was disrespecting him on purpose. On camera, Mason kept talking, and the mood instantly shifted from comedy to awkwardness. After the show, Mason claimed Sullivan made a rude remark and even suggested Ed insulted him with an offensive comment. The story exploded, and suddenly it wasn't about jokes anymore, it was about pride, ego, and control. Ed Sullivan hated being challenged in public, especially on his own stage. As a result, Jackie Mason was reportedly banned from the show for years, proving Ed never forgot humiliation. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan wasn't the kind of performer Ed Sullivan liked to deal with, because Dylan didn't come to entertain, he came to say something. In the early 1960s, Dylan was becoming the voice of a new generation, and his songs often carried political messages and sharp social commentary. When he was scheduled to appear on The Ed Sullivan Show, Dylan planned to perform "Talkin' John Birch Paranoid Blues," a satirical song that mocked paranoia and extremist thinking. But Sullivan's producers were nervous. The lyrics were considered too risky for national television, and they feared backlash from sponsors and angry viewers. Dylan was reportedly told to choose a different song. Instead of cooperating, he refused to be controlled and chose to walk away rather than censor himself. That decision created instant tension and made him look like a problem guest in Ed's eyes. Dylan's attitude wasn't rude, it was rebellious. And for Ed Sullivan, rebellion on his stage was unacceptable. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis was one of rock and roll's wildest stars, famous for his piano pyrotechnics, frenetic energy, and unstoppable talent. But his personal life made him one of the most controversial figures in music history. When news broke that Lewis had married his 13-year-old cousin, the scandal shocked America and horrified networks trying to maintain a family-friendly image. For The Ed Sullivan Show, this was a nightmare. Sullivan was known for presenting clean, respectable entertainment to millions of viewers, and Lewis's reputation clashed with that carefully curated image. Even though he was a phenomenal performer, Ed's team considered him too risky to appear on national television. Any appearance could provoke backlash from sponsors and conservative audiences. Behind the scenes, Ed reportedly expressed frustration at the impossibility of booking such a star without attracting controversy. Jerry Lee Lewis became a symbol of rebellion, talented, thrilling, and too hot to handle for Ed Sullivan's controlled world. Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce was the ultimate provocateur of his time, a comedian who thrived on pushing boundaries and exposing society's taboos. His routines were filled with sharp social commentary, controversial language, and jokes about politics, religion, and sex, subjects that were considered completely unacceptable for 1960s television. Ed Sullivan's Show, by contrast, was strictly family-friendly, carefully curated, and aimed at millions of homes across America. Sullivan had zero tolerance for performers who could shock or offend his audience, and Lenny Bruce represented everything he wanted to avoid. Even the thought of Bruce performing on live TV made producers nervous, and it was widely believed that Ed would never allow him on the show. Bruce's reputation as a dangerous and unpredictable entertainer made him the perfect example of a star Ed couldn't control. For Sullivan, it wasn't about talent, it was about maintaining order, respectability, and the show's carefully polished image. Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley was a pioneering rock and roll guitarist with a unique rhythm and stage presence that captivated audiences, but he was also famously independent and unafraid to defy authority. When he was invited to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, producers carefully planned which song he would play, aiming for a smooth, family-friendly segment. Bo Diddley, however, had other ideas. Instead of performing the requested song, he launched into one of his own hits, sticking to his signature beat and style. The decision completely broke the planned flow of the show, frustrating Ed Sullivan and the production team, who valued order and control above all. On live television, this act of rebellion made Sullivan visibly irritated, even though Bo's performance thrilled the audience. His refusal to follow directions became legendary, and he was reportedly banned from the show afterward. Bo Diddley's moment highlighted the tension between rebellious rock stars and Sullivan's strict, controlled stage environment. Mae West. Mae West was one of Hollywood's most iconic stars, famous for her wit, double entendres, and bold personality. She had built a career on pushing boundaries, delivering risqué jokes and playful innuendos that audiences loved, but 1950s television was a very different world. When Mae West appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, her signature style immediately clashed with the show's conservative, family-friendly image. Her lines, full of sexual innuendo, sparked concern among producers who worried about complaints from viewers and sponsors. Ed Sullivan, always careful to maintain a clean and controlled program, reportedly found her material uncomfortable and difficult to manage. Even though West's performance was hilarious and charismatic, Ed struggled to hide his irritation, and the tension was noticeable on camera. Her appearance became a cautionary tale of how a bold, independent performer could challenge the strict norms of early television. Mae West was unforgettable, but she was exactly the type of star Ed Sullivan had a hard time tolerating.